Well, happy anniversary, everybody. Yeah, it's been one whole year since we started doing these Mondays with Mundy. So thanks for joining us. So if you haven't guessed yet, I'm Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation, and this is our 52nd episode. So I hope you've had fun watching them over the course of the year. Lots of information about the league, its history, and especially its members, because after all, clubs are about people. And so is today's episode. But we're going to delve into the discipline of architecture. And for those of you who know me, architecture is a big interest of mine, and I've tried not to bore you all with it, if you will. But today's episode is about a league member who I think was Philadelphia's most prominent architect, probably of all time, believe it or not. His name was Horace Trumbauer, and he is responsible for building 2/3 of the league clubhouse. But we'll get to that eventually. So this might actually turn out to be this will be a multi-part series because one can't fit all of Trumbauer's history into 15 minutes. So we'll give it a start. All right. So I will do the ubiquitous screen sharing. Okay. I pick that PowerPoint and I do this, and then I wait for that. I do that, and we do that, and hot diggity dogs, it worked again. Okay. All right. And I do think he was Philadelphia's, and still is Philadelphia's architect in many ways. So here he is, Horace Trumbauer. He was born in the Bridesburg neighborhood of Philadelphia on December the 30th of 1868. His father, both of his parents were of German ancestry, going back to the 1730s, actually. And he had a relative, an ancestor, who fought in the Revolutionary War, of which he was very proud, and rightfully so. His father was a dry goods merchant, relatively successful, but not greatly so, and never made a lot of money. So they were middle class, if you will, than anything else. And Trumbauer was educated in the Philadelphia school system, but when he was a young man, they moved to what was known as Ashbourne, which today is Elkins Park, for a good reason, and we'll find out. But Trumbauer, at the age of 14, had to go to work, and he got a job working as an office boy for Philadelphia architects of George and William Hewitt. And this is the building where their firm was located. You can see it's called the Insurance Company of Philadelphia at 310 Chestnut Street. It's got a very Frenesian look to it, doesn't it? This is where the Hewitts had their office. And this is where Trumbauer went to work at a very, very young age. But it was clear from the very beginning as well, though, that Trumbauer had a lot of talent and bright, and I would imagine aggressive young kid, because from office boy, he went to learning how to draw and become a draftsman in the firm itself. And all of this while he's still a teenager. And he never graduated anything past high school, if even that. And it's not even clear that he did that, as a matter of fact. So here's a kid who has, again, another example of just someone with a really, really good head on their shoulders, but who also had, the personality to do something with it. So, all right, and this is what the 300 block of Chestnut Street looked like. So the Hewitt firm was on the left-hand side of the photograph, okay? All right, so this is Philadelphia circa 1879, all right? Okay, now the Hewitts were well-versed in doing large country estate houses. After all, it's the post-Civil War. Lots of people made a lot of money, including Henry H. Houston, Pennsylvania Railroad, oil. Everybody had money in oil back then, but especially the Pennsylvania Railroad. And so Houston commissioned this house from the Hewitts, and it was called Drum Moor. And it's made of the ubiquitous Wissahickon schist, limestone trimmings and things like that. But just look how majestic this is. And so this is the kind of work that Trumbauer is being exposed to when he worked in the Hewitt office. Big stone buildings. And Trumbauer, though, was a pretty aggressive kid. So he wasn't going to just keep working for somebody else. He wanted to go work for himself. And this is him, 1890, all right? Now keep in mind, he's 21 years old, smoking a cigar already. That ought to tell you something about his personality right there, right? So Trumbauer left the Hewitt firm and went off on his own, and he opened up his own office in the same building, by the way, at 310 Chestnut Street, all right? And at this point in time, there are two Union League members, Peter A.B. Widener, the wealthiest man in Philadelphia, and Anthony J. Drexel, maybe the third or fourth wealthiest man in Philadelphia. And they're going to become real estate developers in three specific neighborhoods. Overbrook in West Philadelphia, if you will, Overbrook Park, Germantown, Mount Airy, Pelham Park, and then Wayne, Pennsylvania, along the Pennsylvania main line. And they would hire developers named Wendell and Smith, Homer Wendell and Walter Smith, and they in turn hired Trumbauer as a new architect to help them develop these urban and suburban neighborhoods, but suburban type neighborhoods, though, both Overbrook and in Mount Airy. So, and this is the kind of work that Trumbauer was developing. So this was the Edward Seymour house in Germantown, 1891. And again, stone. Again, let's come back to that massivity of that massing of stone, but also these round towers with canonical roofs to them became an early trademark in Trumbauer's. This is a house in Wayne, Pennsylvania. It's known as the John Whitehouse, 1893. And again, you can see this massing of stone, rounded towers, shingling, all right, very popular. And this is pretty sophisticated work for a young kid who's not even 25 years old yet. I mean, this is just really good stuff. And so Trumbauer's beginning to make his reputation, right? Now, it just so happened that a sugar manufacturer who was also a member of the league, surprise, named William L. Harrison, was walking on Chestnut Street and saw some watercolor drawings in a storefront window of Trumbauer's. And that got him interested in Trumbauer's work. And so he went and he engaged Trumbauer to help him, should we say, renovate or expand a house that he had in what is now Glenside. It was called Rosedale Manor, right? And it was finished in 1893 for the Harrison family. And at this point, the Harrison had just sold his sugar interest to the Havmeyer conglomerate in New York City, so he's got lots of money, and he's going to spend it on a family home. And that house would burn down in 1893, and this is the house that he commissioned from Horace Trumbauer in 1893 to replace his original home. This is called Gray Towers, and it is in Glenside. Today, we all know it as the administrative headquarters building for Arcadia University. But again, this is a 23-year-old kid, architect, with no formal training other than the apprenticeship system, and look what he produces. I mean, so think of Glenmore, think of those smaller suburban homes, but again, look at this. I mean, this is neat stuff, okay, for a kid this age. I mean, it's amazing. And this is what Gray Towers looks like. This was circa 1928, but again, you get the idea of an estate, because Trumbauer is going to become one of the great estate developers in the country as well. So off to the left, you can see the original stable block that he had built for Harrison originally. That's where the family lived actually after their house burned down, and they would then move into Gray Tower shortly afterwards. So this is the kind of work that Trumbauer is capable of doing at the age of 23 years old. And this is the interior of Gray Tower. I mean, pretty sophisticated for a kid that age, isn't it? All right. So Trumbauer is off and running, right? Now, it doesn't hurt that at this point, he is rubbing elbows with Union League members because they had the money, right? And so the next Union League member, we're going back to the John Whitehouse. Again, he's doing these all at 1893. So you can see how sophisticated he's becoming. I mean, this is just a great building. And this is on Luella Avenue in Wayne, on the south side of Lancaster Avenue. So good stuff there. Okay, now at the time that Trumbauer is getting his career off and running, there's another architect, Richard Morris Hunt, who's considered the dean of American architects at this point in time. He's building houses like this, if they want to call this a house. This is an estate. This is Biltmore in Asheville, North Carolina. It opened in 1895. It was commissioned by George Washington Vanderbilt. And this is the Breakers that was commissioned by Cornelius Vanderbilt II in Newport. And again, opened 1895. So you can see what's going on in the rest of this world where these wealthy industrialists and entrepreneurs now have this money to build large estate houses and create large estates at the same time. Biltmore, by the way, was then and still is the largest private residence in America. Okay. And so, 1896, George W. Elkin, the son of William Elkin, And the Elkins were the second wealthiest family in Philadelphia behind the Wideners. And this is the house that George commissioned for his family called Shelton House. All right. And it is in Elkins Park, which was named after, obviously, the Elkins family. So this is in an English Tudor, kind of Elizabethan maybe style, but you get that. But you get the idea. And so Trumbauer is drawing on his English architectural ancestry, if you will, to develop a house for George Elkins. And this is the stable block. I mean, just look at that. I mean, look at those beautiful quatrefoils there. I mean, the stable block is magnificent, but let alone the house itself. This is the interior of the hall. This is the entrance hall when you walked in on the door. So this is what, now you can see what Trumbauer is really capable of doing. So he's really flexing his architectural muscles at this point, all right? Because what else is going on right now? This is the Gilded Age, all right? It began debatable maybe in the mid-1880s, but by 1890, certainly there is an awful lot of money that these wealthy financiers, industrialist entrepreneurs are going to spend on these estate houses. And George's father wasn't going to let his son get the better of him. So 3 years later in 1896, he commissions, 1898, he commissions, and that's only 2 years later, he commissions Trumbauer to build his house, which is literally not even a 5-minute walk away from his son's house. Literally, it's just off to the right-hand side of the picture. This is done in the Italian Renaissance fashion. So you can see that Trumbauer is now switching his idioms, his architectural idioms. So he's beginning to expand his, what an artist would call their palette. Okay, and this is done in the Italian Renaissance style. It's just a beautiful building. And this is the entrance hall. And yes, it is that magnificent. It's just a stunning property. All right, so from Elkins to Widener. Peter A.B. Widener, right? He commissions our young architect in 1897 to create what would be the largest house in the Philadelphia region for the next 30 years. This was called Linwood Hall, and it is literally across the street from the Elkinses on Ashbourne Avenue. So you can see how, at this point, the Elkins and the Widener families have intermarried. So they're not quite kissing cousins, but they're getting close to it. And this is, think about how young Trumbauer is now. It's 1897. He's 30 years old, designing a building that is this sophisticated, this magnificent. And it was 110 rooms, 70,000 square feet. And I mean, the Widener family didn't need that kind of living space, but Peter A.B. Widener had the greatest art collection in Philadelphia at this point in time. So think of this as a large art gallery in some ways as well. But look at the landscaping, the building, just Palladianism at its finest, right? And this is what the building looked like shortly, well, today, if we will. The landscaping has gone, obviously, but you get an idea of just the massiveness. The building itself is a T, so you have the Corinthian column portico on the front, and it runs straight through to the back, and that's basically where the art gallery was located. Okay, so give you some idea of just how big a building this is. And if you can imagine the sophistication of Trumbauer designing something in his early 30s, it's just, all right, amazing, because Richard Morris Hunt wouldn't design Biltmore until he was 63. So Trumbauer is 30 years younger than Richard Morris Hunt, and he's putting up buildings almost as big as Hunt is. Just spectacular stuff. All right, and this is what the campus looks like, the property, if you will. So there is White Marsh Hall in the lower right-hand corner. You can see the landscaping. All right, and off to the left, you have what is called, Linwood. Did I say Longwood? I said Longwood, didn't I? Linwood. And that is Linwood Lounge off to the left, which would become the family home for one of Peter A.B.'s sons, Joseph. And then in the upper corner along the edge there is the home of Peter's granddaughter, Eleanor Elkins Widener, and she would marry Fitz Eugene Dixon. So that was called Ronnie Allen. We'll get to that in the next episode. But here, I just want you to see what Trumbauer was capable of doing at such an early age. But what that also meant then is that he would become, how do I put, let me put this, other Philadelphia architects would become very jealous of him because they weren't getting these commissions. Trumbauer was. And here's Trumbauer, a working class kid from Bridesburg, nothing more than a high school education at the most, no college education, nothing more than an apprenticeship in an architectural office. And this is what he's doing in his early 30s. So It's not surprising everybody else was jealous of him. And that's another story we'll get to in the next episode. So with that, this is Trumbauer in his early 30s, and you get to see what he looked like here. So there we go. So that was a rather quick, I hope that was quick, episode to give you an introduction to the beginning career of Horace Trumbauer. Now, he would join the Union League in 1905, so 1905, and that's where we'll pick up the story when we come back the next time. Okay, so thank you all for watching. I hope I whetted your appetite for more architecture and more Horace Trumbauer, because you can't walk anywhere in Center City, Philadelphia without running across Trumbauer in some way, shape, or form, either residential or but probably commercial. So we'll go deeper into that one in another episode as well. So stay tuned, as they say. So a shout out to the Legacy Foundation for supporting this series, and a shout out to all of you for being with us for the past year. All I can say is thank you very much. It's very humbling. So stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you in a week. Bye now.